What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another Pioneer video, and today we're going to be taking a look at what I dub is probably the best card from the Outlaws of Thunder Junction set, at least in terms of the impact that it is making on the Eternal formats and seeing some amount of play in Standard, but we kind of knew once this card was spoiled and everyone looked at it that this card was going to be a monster in Pioneer and Modern. So we're going to be looking at the Pioneer version of this deck today, so we're going to take a look at Mono Red Aggro for the Pioneer format, definitely taking the format by storm, putting up some pretty good results. You know, seeing players like Tandy and Doomwake kind of 5-0/4-1 with this kind of archetype around Slickshot show off. So we're going to take a look at the Mono Red version. Easily, I think probably the easiest one to pilot of all of them. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think that there is some room to kind of make some like finesse plays and make some really cool things happen. But typically speaking, you know, you're not going to have to be, you know, subtle about kind of what you're doing or how you're doing things. Maybe in some cases you will, but a lot of the time, you know, I feel like with decks like this, you are able to get away with, you know, main phasing a lot of like your stuff. So with that said, you know, before we get into the Mono Red Aggro deck, go through the ins and outs and kind of explain what the heck I'm talking about here. If you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see more videos like this, I do a lot of Pioneer, Modern, and longer form content. So if any of that interests you, please consider subscribing to the channel and ring the notification bell so you know when future videos get posted. It's a free, easy way to support me and my content, as well as checking out the Casual Spikes podcast that goes up on most Saturdays as well. Super long. We usually try to aim for probably about an hour, 15, hour and a half. Sometimes we go almost 2 hours. So there's definitely a lot of content there. We talk a lot about the Modern and Pioneer format as we do here, along with some of the other things going on kind of in that Magic the Gathering space. So if any of that interests you, go ahead and check that over there on my channel as well. And we have a playlist with quite a few episodes. I believe we're up to 10 episodes now, plus kind of like a get to know us episode. So there's 11 videos there. You know, if you want more of that, you can definitely check it out. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into the deck. So Mono Red Aggro has been an archetype that's existed really throughout Magic. It's not very hard to see why. I mean, this essentially, like, red is kind of known for this speed and aggression, and definitely not missing any of it here with the creatures, where we have Get To Lava Runner, we have Slickshot Show Off, Soulscar Mage, and Monastery Swiftspear. You know, these three creatures are all 1-drops. They all have, well, Soulscar Mage and Monastery Swiftspear have prowess, so whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature is going to get +1/+1 until end of turn. You don't even need to target it with, you know, any of the spells that you're casting. It's just going to naturally get buffed by casting those spells. Get To Lava Runner is a 1-mana 1/2 that is going to get +1/+0 and have haste as long as there are 2 or more instant sorcery cards in your graveyard, which you can kind of do on turn 2 depending on your kind of draw, but not necessarily important. The important thing between Lava Runner, Soulscar Mage, and Slickshot Show Off, which is kind of the purpose of playing a deck like this, is the fact that they're all wizards, and it actually gives you access to essentially a lightning bolt in the deck in Wizard's Lightning. This sweet card from Dominaria that was kind of a callback to Lightning Bolt, but you needed to control a wizard, which I guess kind of makes sense in, you know, lore-wise and everything. But this spell would cost 2 less to cast if you control a wizard, and it deals 3 damage to any target. So thanks to Slickshot Show Off, Get To Lava Runner, and Soulscar Mage for being wizards, you can cast a Wizard's Lightning for 1 mana and get the feeling of casting a Lightning Bolt in a Pioneer format where everyone doesn't get Lightning Bolt. But, you know, they do get access to Skewer the Critics, so you can, you know, Spectacle Skewer the Critics for 1 red, and you get to cast it as a sorcery, deal 3 damage to any target. Pretty self-explanatory. So why exactly do, I guess, we kind of care? Why do we care about, you know, playing these cheap spells and whatnot? Well, because Slickshot Show Off is absolutely busted. So 2 mana, Flying Haste, it has a plot, so you can plot it for the same cost as your as playing it. And a lot of the times, I would have thought you were going to plot on 2 almost regardless of what was going on. And then you were going to play it and you were going to cast a bunch of spells to kill your opponent. But really, just even playing this on turn 2 has been totally fine, where, you know, you get in for, you know, 2 points, you know, from Swiftspear, Soulscar Mage, Get To Lava Runner, plus a Slickshot, you know, whatever. And then you're going to untap on turn 3, ideally play your 3rd land, and then between, like, Monstrous Rage, you know, Wizard's Lightning, Skewer the Critics, all these ways where you're going to give +3 power to a creature, or you're going to deal 3 damage with any of these, virtually become +5 or +6, depending on how many show-offs, Soulscar Mages, and Swiftspears that you have in play. Obviously, the more of these prowess creatures you have, Monster Rage is going to give a creature +2/+0. Give them the Monster Roll token, which is going to give it +1/+1 and Trample. So having or I guess you can create another monster roll on it. Regardless, you're going to be able to target Slickshot with Monstrous Rage. It's going to get 3 power between all the effects from the Monstrous Rage, plus 2 power from its own ability from casting a non-creature spell. Then you get +1/+1 Soul Scar Mage, +1/+1 to a Monastery Swift Spear. So essentially, if you have 2 prowess creatures, you have Slickshot, you're getting +4 power from just the spell, and then you're getting +3 power from the spell itself. So it's adding 7 damage to the board, which is a lot. Play with Fire, essentially you're going to get to deal 2 damage to something, and then also pump up Slickshot, which is going to be 4, and then 5 and 6, depending on the number of prowess creatures you have. So it's kind of easy to understand that this deck is going to deal a ton of damage out of the gate, and put your opponent immediately on the back foot, and potentially just win the game out of nowhere if they tap out with no way to actually get rid of a Slickshot show off. And that's kind of the punishing thing of this deck, is the fact that if they don't really add to the board in a meaningful way, they can easily just get blown out by all these creatures. Even if you have like Lava Runner, Swift Spear, or Swift Spear, Soul Scar Mage, if you use Play with Fire to get a creature out of the way, and then you Monstrous Rage, and then Wizard's Lightning, what have you, there's 6 damage from just these spells essentially, and then +2/+2 on each creature. So that's 10 damage, 12 damage that gets through just by getting a creature out of the way, and then using kind of your spells to deal a bunch of damage to your opponent. And then you have Skewer the Critics, Future Wizard's Lightnings, and Play with Fires and things like that to go to your opponent's face to try to close out the game if they manage to kind of gum up the board and deal with your threats. We have Reckless Impulse and Light Up the Stage, which are going to be pretty cheap ways that you can get some card advantage going, where Reckless Impulse gives you until your next turn to play the exile cards, where Light Up the Stage, it does also the same thing, but you have the potential to do it for 1 mana if you combine it on turn 2 onward with something like a Play with Fire, maybe a Wizard's Lightning, plus a Light Up the Stage is going to satisfy that, or just getting it in with any of your creatures. Lastly, we have Kumano Faces a Kakazan, which is an amazing enchantment and saga for this deck. So it's going to do 1 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control on Chapter 1, which is kind of whatever. On 2, you're going to be able to cast your next creature spell, and it's going to enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Then you're able to exile the Saga Return to the Battlefield transformed into a 2/2 with haste that says whenever a creature's dealt damage this turn by a source you control would die, you exile instead. So there's a little bit of synergy there by just getting to exile creatures instead of having them die, which does kind of help with things like a Vein Ripper and things like that. I don't know why that card was so hard to go after. I mean, it's been in the format and dominating it really since Pro Tour, or since Pro Tour Murders of Karlov Manor. So this is going to help you pump up your Slickshot show off to a 2-power thing. 2/3 is a little bit harder to deal with, in terms of some of the other things going on, which means like Monstrous Rage, getting a +1/+1, can protect it from something like a Wizard's Lightning, Skewer the Critics, and things like that. Obviously, you don't want to be using Monstrous Rage as like a defensive tool, but that is something that is possible with the +1/+1 counter from Kumano, especially with how much mono red seems to be running around now in this current format. You go to the lands, 11 mountains, super simple. Ramen Ruins is a way to get more reach. Sacrifice a desert, and Ramen Ruins deals 2 damage to each opponent. Yes, you can sacrifice the Ramen Ruins you're choosing to activate to the cost, and you're still going to deal the 2 damage. Den of the Bugbear is a way that you can kind of sink some excess of mana into, where you can then turn into a 4/4 or turn into a 3/2. When it attacks, you create a 1/1, which is a way that can help you get some reach. You have Soken Zen, which is going to make it 2 1/1s for 4 mana. With haste, you can do this on your opponent's end step. You can even play this like main phase to kind of get some more bodies on the board and attack through for lethal. Going down further, you have the sideboard. We have Rending Volley, Tears of Valakut, Case of the Crimson Pulse, Rampaging Ferocidon, Witchstalker Frenzy. Witchstalker Frenzy is kind of this neat card that where you're going to get to attack with 2, 3, 4 creatures, and it's going to end up being 1 mana deal 5. So you're going to be able to attack, and then before your opponent's even be able to assign blockers, you're able to cast Witchstalker Frenzy to end up killing one of their creatures, making blocks a little bit harder for them. Rampaging Ferocidon, players can't gain life. It's 3/3 for 3 with Menace, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield, Rampaging Ferocidon deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. So again, you're getting to punish the creature decks as well as putting a ton of pressure on them in the air with Slickshot Show Off. Keys of the Crimson Pulse, discard a card, then draw 2 when it enters for 3 mana, and then when you have no cards in hand, it gets solved. At the beginning of your upkeep, you discard your hand, then draw 2 cards. This is a way that you can get additional kind of card advantage, where you're going to end up being able to play all your spells. Like, you're going to get empty-handed, and then you're not really drawing any cards like on your opponent's turn. So you're going to be able to discard the 0 cards you have in hand, draw 2 cards, and then draw for your draw step. So you're going to get access to 3 new cards every single turn, where unless you draw like multiple lands, you're going to be able to play all the cards out in your hand every single time. Tears of the Valakut. Can't be countered by spells or abilities. It deals 5 damage to target creature with flying, which means that you can kill Vein Rippers before they get counters on them, and you do not have to sacrifice a creature thanks to the uncounterability on Tears of Valakut. And Rending Volley. Can't be countered by spells or abilities. Deal 4 damage to target white or blue creature. And that is the mono red aggro deck for the Pioneer format. This deck is super powerful, kind of like the things that we were laying out here, where you can kind of play on your main phase, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily wrong. If your opponent taps out, like absolutely, like you just play all these cards at sorcery speed, where you like Wizard's Lightning your opponent, Skewer the Critics, Monstrous Rage, whatever, get in for tons of damage, potentially killing them as well. And I would say, like, overall, you're not necessarily punished, especially if you want to go, Wizard's Lightning, your opponent's face, so you can cast, like, a Light Up the Stage, or Play with Fire to cast Light Up the Stage, or Reckless Impulse, again, just, like, casting these spells. They're going to grow your Swift Spear, grow your Soulscar Mage, potentially grow your Get 2 Lava Runner if it's your second instant or sorcery in there, and, of course, grow the Slickshot Show Off, where, again, if you just have, like, one of these, one prowess creature and one Slickshot, Reckless Impulse is going to add 3 power to the board already off the rip, and so you're attacking for 5 damage on the second or third turn of the game, just off of this Reckless Impulse. Of course, find a land, cast another spell, you're going to add another 3 power to the board on top of the spell that you just cast, whether it's going to deal 3 damage with Skewer the Critics, Wizard's Lightning, or you're going to end up dealing extra damage with like Monstrous Rage, what have you. There's just a few different lines. This is a deck that, the hardest part about it is probably the math and making sure that you can kill your opponent. And a lot of the times it is pretty easy. If you go Swift Spear on 1, Slickshot on 2, untap, you cast like 3 Wizard's Lightnings. That's 9 damage from the Wizard's Lightnings. That's going to be plus 6 power to the Slickshot, plus 3 power to the Swift Spear. So then you have 13 damage from the Wizard's Lightning. Then you have another, 7 damage here, so that's 21 damage, I believe. It's over 20 damage. Your opponent starts at 20 life. The game is over. Of course, you get into attack with the Swift Spear Slickshot as well, so you have a little bit of buffer as well for something like Amalia and things like that. So the deck is insane. It has some pretty crazy draws, and honestly, like even if you flood out, it's not necessarily a bad thing. There's some versions that we're playing the companion, of course, Jengatha. It always escapes me. Jengatha is like the companion. You could probably play one here, going down a case, or like a Rampaging Ferocidon. It is a card that like you can play later on. It ends up being a 5-mana 5/5. In like the worst case, it is an additional creature that you can play that does wear a monster roll token pretty nicely as well. Just getting to be a 6/6 with trample. On every turn past, the turn that you Monstrous Rage. So something to consider. There's also some Gruul versions. There's some red-white versions, but I think mono red is pretty much the most straightforward and the cheapest to build in paper, where like literally most of your money is going to be in Slickshot Show Off, and then you can use the rest of the money to kind of pimp out your basic lands. So pretty neat. That's the mono red deck for the Pioneer format. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more videos like this, of course, leave a like on the video. Comment down below what other Pioneer deck you would like to see in the future. And of course, subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you know when future videos get posted. And of course, it's a free, easy way to support me and my content here. And, of course, check out the Casual Spikes podcast that goes up on most Saturdays. And if you would like to support me even further than that, which I am already grateful, appreciative if you've already done that, I do have channel memberships as well. So if you would like to become a member today, get access to some pretty cool perks and some ever-expanding perks in the future, be sure to do that as well. All of it plans on going back into the channel and trying to improve kind of like the setup and everything like that. So, yeah, that's going to be this video. Hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next one.